So here we go. So this is sort of like my search term when I'm looking at doing any sort of deco work. I start with ancient iconography. I move around. Yeah, I will push it through, Simon. I'll push that out towards the end of class, all right? So I go to searching ancient iconography. And this is, I guess, is really just, it's an aesthetic choice for me to go through and say, okay, this is sort of where I find my inspiration. So I'll search for this and I'll start looking for decorative items or storytelling elements that I can pull from history to incorporate into my work. So ancient iconography is one. Another one is, and I think I pulled this up for you before. Hopefully I don't butcher the name. Rococo Deco. Oops, not decor. I wanted deco. So something like this, and it all really depends on what I'm looking for. And I think I pulled this up at the very beginning of the project for you guys, but I'm going back to it for other inspiration. Other stuff that you can pull up is tribal illustration. So you get a lot of Pacific Islander stuff, probably Mayan, Incan. The only thing that I hate about this search result is this sort of stuff, sort of modern tattoo work, right? So it helps if you know what culture you're chasing after. So if you're, you say Maori illustration, right? And then you'll get Maori patterns that you can play with. Or if you go Pacific Northwestern, Mayan, Incan, Pacific Northwestern, Native American. I guess that was, I didn't type what I was thinking. There we go. So there you go, right? There's more fuel for inspiration. Like Mayan, Aztec, Incan, all that stuff. Or if you go by culture, if you go to early Roman stuff, or you look at stuff from Pompeii, you can find any. But what you're looking for is a language to bind your character thematically, right? So for me, I'm thinking oceanfaring, and I'm thinking more along the lines of Rome or Greece, something along the lines of like God of War, right? So I would go Neptune illustration and just see what's out there, right? Of course, I'd be looking at the Trident, but coming across stuff like this feeds me ideas, especially the older stuff. Like if you go into like maps that were done during like the Renaissance or in the 17th century, you can find a lot of cool stuff. And I'm really looking for more than I'm looking for not so much the literal thing of like, oh, I'm going to use these flourishes, right? But I'm looking for an underlying design language. I'm looking for the line art, right? And I'm trying to think of forms and shapes that I can incorporate into the surface of my character. So going back to this is where I sort of hit a point of inspiration, and I was like, oh, these should all have carvings in it. And what I was looking at was scrimshaw. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen ivory scrimshaw from like old whaling vessels and all that stuff, but let me pull that up. Right, so stuff like this, right? Little games. I think is that Sunka? No, it's not Sunka. Sunka's the shell game. But something along these lines, right? This is where I sort of got that point of inspiration. I'm like, okay, well, what am I going to carve into it? But it helps to have an eclectic brain that gets scattered across time to pull inspiration from. So I thought I'd share that with you guys, and I want to let you know where I was pulling it from. So there's patterns that that I like from, like if you go, let's go. Actually, let me just search it for you so I can just show you the images. All right, so here's the pattern in Mosaic, right? Is stuff like this, right? Well, and I think that's more Gothic. That's not Roman at all. Stuff like this, right? It's the simplified, broad stroke line. Like there's that, there's something you could see. This is like leading into the Middle Ages in Europe, right? That feels very, very Renaissance. But it's this sort of stuff that I want to incorporate into my surface to finish off my creature. So, for instance, Simon, for your creature, you have your slave gear, you have your chains and all that. But are there any other elements that you can incorporate that hint at the culture, whether it's in the harnesses and that's inscribed into the leather, or is there anything in your dragon, Marcos, that you can incorporate, or Marcos into your creature? And think about where that comes from. Something that's beyond, I guess, if you were to look at it from micro to macro, you go, okay, you have a creature, right? That creature exists in a state in terms of the experience of that creature's life. So, in the case of Simon's, it was a slave, right? It was bound, right? And then it exists within the context of the history of that world or the culture, right? So, trying to layer story elements on top of this creature. Yeah, so that's what I'm going to be doing right now.